Hi everyone, I wanted to show you today how I make our bread. I've been making our family's bread for years, but the way I make it now is actually a new method that I've only been using for probably about 6 months now. And basically that is to use a sourdough starter. And the difference between a sourdough starter and regular bread is that rather than using yeast, like instant yeast, we just use the starter in place of the yeast, as well as flour, water, and salt. And those are the only ingredients in the bread. And the benefit of that being that the yeast that is in this bread, it's a natural leaven. It's like wild yeast spores that are just natural in the sourdough rather than commercial yeast, which promotes candida. So this bread is very easy to make, but it is a little different, and I just want to show you how to do it. So the proportions are very easy. To make the bread, like I said, you only need starter, flour, water, and salt. And for 1 loaf of bread, you want to use 1 cup of starter, 1 cup of water, 1 teaspoon of salt, and 3 to 4 cups of flour. You just do that depending on how your dough is turning out while you make it. So I will start with a starter. I'm going to make a triple batch, so I will use 3 cups of starter. That's 2 cups right here. And 1 more cup. Okay. That's the 3 cups of starter, and basically this starter I keep in my fridge year-round. I bought this starter already ready from Azure Standard. There's a way to make your own. I do not feel confident making that in our climate. I bought it ready, and I highly recommend you do the same. It's very easy and it's inexpensive, and you can just keep it going. It's not a major expense. So that was the 3 cups of flour. I'm going to add 3 cups of water. By adding the water after the starter, you kind of get all the residue out, so you're not really wasting any. That's 2 cups. Three. And then 3 teaspoons of salt. 1, 2, 3. Some people at this point like to add some honey. If you add about a tablespoon of honey to your dough, you will not have that sourdough taste at all. For bread, I don't usually do that. I only do that if I make cinnamon rolls or something. And then the flour. Now, I milled my flour fresh here from wheat berries. You do not have to do that. The flour you want to get is organic whole wheat flour. You don't want pastry flour. You can use organic bread flour, but really just any regular plain old whole wheat organic flour will do. And while it is true that freshly milled flour has more nutrients than flour that's been sitting on a store shelf, this process of fermenting the bread and making it a sourdough bread will actually add many, many nutrients and offset the fact that you lost vitamins if you're not using freshly milled flour. So if you don't have a grain mill, don't feel bad about it. It is more cost effective in the long run if you have one, but if you're not at a point in your life where you can have a grain mill, regular flour from the store will do just fine. I'm going to add 9 cups to this. And it's not that exact of a science, you don't have to agonize over it. You can add a little more flour later or a little more water if it's necessary. That's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now I have a 5-quart KitchenAid. If you have a 5-quart or larger, I recommend you can do the 3 loaves at one time. If you have a 4-quart or small, I would only do a maximum of 2 loaves. So 2 cups of starter, 2 cups of water, and 6 cups of flour, so you don't overcapacitate your machine. If you don't have a stand mixer at all, you would at this point start kneading the dough by hand and adding flour as necessary to get a good consistency. So I'm going to go hook this up to my KitchenAid right now. So I have my dough ready to go now here in the stand mixer. I put it all in here with the kneading hook on, and I'm going to first start out just on the lowest setting because I don't want flour to go everywhere. And I'm just waiting for it to get moist. The instructions of your KitchenAid will tell you never to go above the 2nd out of 10 speeds when mixing or kneading dough. I don't find that necessary. I often go up to 3 or sometimes even 4, and I've not had problems with that, but again, you don't want to have your dough too stiff to do that. So now that it's starting to come together, I can kind of turn it up a little. And this is really just, over time you will learn what the dough is supposed to look like. It will look like any yeast dough when it is done kneading. So I can tell right now it's still a little bit too wet, so I'm going to start adding a little bit of flour as I go. And when you can start to see it pulling away from the side, and it makes a clean bowl, is when your dough is dry enough but not too dry. You just want to add a little bit of flour at this point. Pulling away, but it's not making a ball yet, so you want it to pull away and make a neat ball. There it goes, that's it. So it is now making a clean ball, as you can see. It's forming a neat ball. And I'm going to let it knead. I'm turning it down a little now. I'm going to let it knead like this for several minutes to develop the gluten in the dough and to just get it kneaded really well. It will help it to rise. So I will just let this go for several minutes now. Alright, the dough has been kneading for several minutes and it looks great. The bowl is clean. The dough is still nice and moist and spongy, so it kind of sticks when you touch it. This is exactly the way we want it. So we are ready to get it to rise for the first time. Alright, well, now that my dough is ready, it is ready to get started rising. Now, unlike yeast bread that you might be used to that uses commercial rise yeast, this takes 6 hours on the first rise and 2 hours on the second rise. So you want to get this started early in the day. It is right now 9 o'clock at our house, so when I get this going, it will not need to be dealt with again until it's nap time, which is convenient. And if I have something big I want to make with it, like cinnamon rolls, I have time to do that. My hands will be free at that time. So it needs to rise, and if you notice, this bowl is quite a bit larger than the mixing bowl because this will at least double in size. If it's nice and warm out and your sourdough starter is doing really good, it might even get bigger than that on the first rise. So I just grease this bowl really well. I use sunflower oil for that. I do not recommend using oils in cooked foods, but this is just for the rise. It will not get too warm, so you can use oil for that. Let's simply pull the dough out. It should come out clean out of the bowl, like that. Here's your dough, and this is now ready to rise. My best recommendation for allowing this to rise is to put it in an oven where either your pilot light is on, or if you don't have a gas stove, you could use just the oven light, and that will create a perfect temperature of about 100 degrees in your oven, 98 degrees. It will be perfect for this. If your oven is occupied, you could just cover this with a dish towel and set it out of reach, maybe on top of the refrigerator or on top of the freezer, where it will sit undisturbed for 6 hours. You will know it's done when it's risen to about here and it's just evenly filling the bowl. So this is ready to go in now. Alright, well here we have the dough. It is now risen enough. I actually only let it go for about 4.5 hours today. It's very warm in our kitchen today. You can tell by the way the dough looks, and also if you peel it away, you can see that it has nice big bubbles. It has risen plenty here. So what you want to do is called punching down the dough. Basically just knead it through to get all the air out. You will find it very easy to work with at this point. No need to put it in the mixer. And at this point your dough is finished. You can make it into whatever you want to make it. I'm making bread today, but you could at this point roll it out and make it into cinnamon rolls. You could make baguettes or a pizza crust out of it, whatever you like to do. I'm going to make breads with these. So I have these bread pans. I recommend, the brand is Nordpro. You can buy these on Amazon or on Azure. And you just need to grease them well, but the stainless steel is a much healthier option than the non-stick pans. I think these are about 9 by 5 inches, maybe 10 by 5 inches, I'm not quite sure on the size. They only make one size. So you want to grease it. When you grease it, you want to make sure to get all the way up on the lip of the pan, just in case the bread rises a little bit higher than you intend. And I'm going to make 4 loaves out of this today. Sometimes I make 3 if they're a little bit bigger. Sometimes I make 4, or I might make a couple of loaves and some pizza crust, or a couple of loaves and cinnamon rolls. Today I'm just making bread, so I'm going to divide this equally into 4 pans. 4 is the most that my oven can hold at one time. That's why I make this size batch. So just make sure you get into all the corners when you grease the pan. And 4. So these are all nicely greased. I'm going to just take the dough and just eyeball it, cut it in half one way. Actually, I don't think I have enough dough here for 4 loaves. I'm just going to make 3 loaves and save the rest too. I'm just going to make 3 larger loaves. It's not quite enough to get 4 out of it. Alright, these 3 loaves are now shaped. They're going back in my oven that still has the oven light on, so it's nice and warm in there. And when the loaves are about even with the top of the loaf pan is when they have risen enough, and I will move on to baking them. Okay, so as you can see, the 3 loaves have risen real nicely right now. If anything, they are slightly in danger of over-rising because they're going to rise a little bit more once I turn the oven on, and if you let them go too long, they will actually collapse and have collapse spots in the middle. So this is the most you ever want to let them rise. So I'm going to close the oven. I don't even move them at this point. I'll let them rise in the oven, and then when they're ready to bake, I just simply turn the oven on. In my oven, I bake these loaves at 350 degrees for about 25 to 30 minutes.
Cool.
If your oven runs very hot, you want to turn the temperature down a little. You will have to experiment with that. You can tell that the loaf is done when you take it out and you tap it and it sounds hollow. So I'm going to close this up and turn on my oven. Alright, well, the loaves have finished baking. You can tell by looking at them that they rose a little bit more in the oven, also when you tap them. They kind of sound hollow and they look done overall. Now the crust outside, it's not just hot, but it's also crunchy. So if you want to make it easier to slice them when they're cool, what you want to do as soon as you take them out of the oven is to rub them with some butter, and that will make the crust very nice and soft. Butter should just melt immediately, and it will actually also help release them from the pan because a little bit of the butter will trickle down the sides into the pan. Just be careful not to burn yourself during this step. It will also make the loaves a lot more shiny even once the bread has cooled. Of course, you don't have to do this at all. If you want to have more of a crunchy bread like a baguette, you definitely want to omit this step. As you can see, these loaves rose quite a bit. I should have probably made 4 loaves out of them like I was originally going to do. They are now done. And you can just take a knife and carefully run that along the inside here to loosen the bread from the pan. If you're having trouble getting the bread to release, try letting it sit for a few more minutes. The condensation from the bread as it cools will make it release from the pan more easily. So there's no need to pull it out right away. Here is the bread. And there is the pan. You can see it released quite nicely. Alright, here we have the 3 loaves. They're now out of the pans. They're still very, very hot. Much too hot to slice. You should let it cool at least for an hour. If you were to cut the bread right now, it would tear. You can tell how the crust is already going soft from the butter, and it will continue to become softer as the loaves cool. So this has to sit for at least an hour now, and good luck trying to keep your family out of the warm bread. Alright, this is the inside of the finished loaf. You can tell the crust is very soft. It has risen beautifully inside, has a really good crumb. These are the slices. And mine is actually still slightly warm, so the butter will just melt right onto here. We're having this with dinner tonight, so I have to get going on this. Here we have the official taste tester. How is it, Becky?
Good.
Do you like it?